Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to make an Instant Pot recipe. We're going to do pot roast, a diabetic friendly version.
This is 2 teaspoons of finely ground sea salt and 1 teaspoon of black pepper. 2 teaspoons of finely chopped, or not so finely chopped in that case, of rosemary. This is 4 large shallots quartered. This is 4 garlic cloves minced. This is 4 celery stalks cut into 1-inch pieces, or the best you can do. This is 1 pound, but this one's a little less than 1 pound, of parsnips or turnips, also cut into 1-inch pieces. This is 1 pound of carrots cut into 1-inch pieces, or 1 pound of baby carrots. 1 cup of dry red wine. 2 tablespoons of, they're calling for fresh pressed avocado oil, but we don't have that, so we're just gonna use canola oil because it's a neutral oil that has a high smoke point. And then 2 tablespoons of Dijon mustard. And of course, your 3-pound roast. This is a 3-pound bottom round roast. So let's get started.
So up in the corner was Jimmy, and he was using this great gadget that he got from the Pampered Chef virtual party that I had. If you want to follow me over on Facebook, there's links to all the Pampered Chef stuff. But it's pretty awesome. It's a herb grinder. They sell a set, which is a grinder, a storage container, and a stripper. And that was a pretty awesome way to do that rosemary really fast. So the first thing I just wanted to tell you that happened was I knocked over my oil and flipped my mustard on its end. Yep, boo-boos happen even when you're a quote-unquote professional. So what I did to just save me, and you know, I'm cheap and I don't want to throw my mustard out, I just put it directly into the red wine. Because the red wine and the mustard get added at the same time, I figured no harm, no foul. So I just took a rubber spatula, scraped it all off, and I was able to salvage the whole 2 tablespoons of Dijon. And this is why we keep our table clean before we start cooking. Because you never know when stuff's going to happen. Okay. So now we cleaned it all up. What we're going to do first is we're going to heat our oil. So the roast was out for 1 hour to come to some sort of a more room temperature. That was what was suggested of this recipe. And then it was put on a plate and patted dry when I first took it out of the package. Now we're going to turn the Instant Pot on saute. Most everybody's Instant Pot has a saute button. And we're going to just heat those 2 tablespoons of oil while we salt and pepper the roast, okay? Now, normally we try to keep black pepper out of recipes, but this being a pot roast and there being so little black pepper, Mom didn't find it objectionable. She didn't even notice that we left it in there. So make sure you pat it really well with some paper towels. And now I'm going to take almost half of the salt and pepper mixture for each side, and then I'm going to tap the ends in as well. This is an Angus bottom round roast, 3 pounds, that I got at Aldi for about $13, and this meal will feed about 6 people. So when you include all the vegetables, then it ends up being about, I'd say, less than $20 to feed 6 people, to be honest with you. And we ate pretty good. I eat extra protein, so I had more of the meat than everybody else. Okay? So meantime, the oil is coming to a temperature. I actually set my timer to 2 minutes, so I knew that it was going to be 2 minutes. Whenever I'm making a recipe for the first time, I always like to follow right away, and then I can build from there. Like I don't want to alter it and then change, like, oh, I don't know if it didn't come out good. Was it something I altered, or was it the recipe itself? So whenever I start a recipe for the first time, I always try to follow it right away, and then I can build off it. Like, for example, I think I would have roasted this 5 minutes less and cooked the vegetables 1 minute more. But that's just me. Do the same for yourself, okay? All right. So I always start browning my meat with the fat down. Now, you could trim the fat if you really wanted just a lean portion, but I will tell you, fat is flavor, and you definitely can tell that there's not a lot. It cooked down quite a bit and almost had no fat on the ends of all the pieces. Okay? So The recipe says to brown each side for 4 minutes. And of course, this is on fast forward. So I again set my timer just to make sure that I was exactly 4 minutes. Now, another thing that I didn't mention was ingredients that isn't not in the diabetic portion of this pot roast. Was I served this with mini like fingerling type potatoes, but they actually weren't fingerling potatoes. That's what I ordered, but they sent me all of this like baby mixed potatoes and baby bella mushrooms that I had roasted in the oven, which I'm going to show you in a little bit. But the reason I kept just these ingredients separately because this is the actual recipe that I can give you the nutrition value on. This is the diabetic recipe. Roasted vegetables are not part of the nutritional values that I'll put in the description box. Okay? So the best reason that I was ever taught to start with fat down is because you want to render some of that fat out. So it actually aids in the browning of the other sides. Now, as far as the browning is concerned, to get a really good fond, to get really good browning, that's why we dry the meat the best we can. Otherwise, your meat can get like gray and not really seared and not really that Maillard reaction that you want that creates that like wonderful crust. Because even though this is going to be an Instant pot roast, you still want to have like that nice end piece that's got a good flavor on it. Okay? So we did 4 minutes on the end, the fat end. We're going to do 4 minutes on one side. Then we're going to do 4 minutes on the other. We're not going to worry about the other end just because it's a pot roast. If I was making a roast beef, then I would want to like brown and sear all the sides. But since this is going to be a pot roast, I just want to do the major surfaces. I want to do the fat side, so I render it down. And then I want to do the two other sides. And again, 4 minutes each side. I just asked my timer, my little home assistant device, to go ahead and set a timer for 4 minutes. And this way it was just easy to do, like to wait or to do other things while we were waiting. Now, this could be a good opportunity while you're browning your meat off camera. Say you're a person who's like not a YouTuber. Well, you can actually brown your meat while you're prepping your vegetables. I, of course, need to have like it all laid out for you guys, so I prep my vegetables ahead of time. But I will tell you, in doing that, it made my entire meal time a little bit longer. But you guys can do that while you're working. Now, the recipe calls for a pound of carrots in 1-inch pieces or baby carrots. I opted to go with the baby carrots because when I've noticed in the past that when you cook down parsnips and carrots, they sometimes take on each other's appearance, and the parsnips do have a tiny bit more carbohydrates than carrots, or vice versa. One of them is higher. I feel like the carrots may be a little higher in carbohydrates. Yes, carrots are higher in carbohydrates. That's what it is. So depending on how many of what each serving that you have depends, of course, will depend on the amount of intake of carbohydrates that you have. Definitely don't want to eat all of it by yourself, either one. Again, this meal is meant to serve 6, I believe, is what the book called for, but I will write all that in the description box down below as well. Okay? Including the vegetables. All right. So now I'm having a little difficulty. They said use your tongs to very carefully lift the meat out and turn it over, and I was having a lot of trouble, so I used my dad's big fork. My dad would call it the steel fork. He's like, use the steel fork. So I flipped it over, and we're browning the other side for 4 minutes as well. Okay? Now, this is not a non-stick Instant Pot, so I really could have used like a metal metal tongs or my like Pampered Chef ones, which would be a little bit firmer of a grip. But this is what my assistant gave me, so this is what I used. But I ended up using the fork. As long as I don't stab the Instant Pot, I think you'll be okay. Okay? Now, again, I've set the timer for 4 minutes, but now as soon as this 4 minutes is up, it's when we're going to go ahead and start prepping our vegetables. One technique I want to talk about that we'll talk about here in a minute is they suggested to deglaze your pan with a wooden spoon, which I thought was very interesting and unusual at the same time. I guess you don't want to scrape the pan with metal, but why not silicone or plastic? That was the part I didn't really get. But hey, you know what? They tell me to use wood. I'll use wood. I got wood at my house. I'm all right with that. Just one of those things you're like, head scratcher. I don't know. So this has to cook for 105 minutes, just the meat by itself. And then the vegetables cook really quickly. But like I said, I probably would cook this for just, not 100 minutes. Oh my goodness, don't say 105 minutes, Jeri. That's not right. 1 hour and 5 minutes. Sorry about that. I would probably just set it for 1 hour. That's all, because I feel like maybe it was a little too on the dry side. But I guess that's also a very lean cut of meat that I have as well. So if you're going to use the chuck roast instead, which a chuck roast is a little fatter and is a little bit more common for pot roast, then you probably won't have to worry about that. But definitely think about the times when you're doing that, okay? So now we're just going to throw our shallots right in, right on top of the oil, right on top of all of the fat grease that we got. I'm just stirring them around a little bit to coat them all in a little grease and oil. There is a little fat in this meal as well, which is, fat's a little good, but if you have to watch your fat, then you might want to trim your meat and use more like the avocado oil like they recommended, because that's a really good fat. Remember, canola oil is just, there's a seed. It's called a rape seed. So that's why they call it that. So just use canola oil. Canola oil comes from the words Canada oil. But yeah. So we're going to do the shallots for a solid 2 minutes just by themselves, just to give them a little head start and a little color. Again, I'm just trying to move them around and separate them. If you've never eaten a shallot before, I have to tell you, it's only been, well, that I know of, because if I've had shallots in a recipe at a restaurant, I wouldn't know. But shallots I've only been cooking with in the last 2 or 3 years, and I really do like them. They do taste like garlic has married a red onion, so they're really nice and mild. After 2 minutes with just the shallots, we put in the garlic and just do the garlic for just 1 minute. But of course, like I told you before, this is on 2 times speed, so it's going to go really, really fast here in 30 seconds. You want to prep your liquids, because this is where we're going to deglaze the pan. Remember, the pan is still on saute, okay? Saute on high, so you're still on saute. And now Jimmy got me his new wooden spoons that we got at QVC. And you're going to go ahead and pour it in. Get all the steamy goodness. I use my rubber spatula. Make sure you get all of that little mustard that was in there. And then you throw in the rosemary as well. And now, I have to stand up. Now it's when you deglaze the pan. Basically, if you've never deglazed a pan, you're going to use the cooking liquid to scrape all of the bits off the bottom. Now, there's a couple of reasons you really want to do this. First, that's where the flavor is. It's called the fond, F-O-N-D, and that's all of those little brown bits that are in the bottom of the pot. You definitely want them in your food. You want them to season your food and your gravy, for sure. And the second thing is, and if you're not interested in flavor, it helps clean the pot later. I mean, for no other reason. Now we're going to put our meat back in with all of the juices from the plate. We're going to take a ladle and just spoon some of the meat, the liquid over the meat. Some of the shallots went along with it, and that's totally 100% fine. So the instructions are: put on the lid, set the seal to sealing, not venting, and then set there you go, to sealing, not venting, right? And then you're going to set the meat stew button, which is there, and then you're going to press it set it for 1 hour and 5 minutes. Why do I keep saying 105? Because it looks like 105. But 1 hour and 5 minutes, and make sure it's on high pressure. And then you just let it go. Now, you want to let it cook for its 1 hour and 5 minutes, and then you want it to have it natural release for 15 minutes. And then what I do is, when I hear the timer of the Instant Pot go off, I want to go ahead and I tell my personal assistant timer to set its timer for 15 minutes so I can go back and finish the rest. Now, while that's cooking, we're going to go ahead and we're going to roast the potatoes and the mushrooms like I mentioned previous. So for the mushrooms, these are just baby bellas, which are baby portobello mushrooms. They're very meaty. I think that they have a very delicious taste, but not everybody likes mushrooms. 100%, I get it. But I will tell you, and I've mentioned this before, every vegetable takes on a different taste by its preparation. I find that true 100% of the time. Now, there may be vegetables out there that I am not correct about, or maybe your taste just you don't agree. But I will tell you that a roasted mushroom tastes way different than a sauteed mushroom that tastes way different than mushrooms you put in soup. I mean, that's just boiled mushrooms. Like, to me, they're all different. They even taste different than mushrooms that you eat raw, like, because you sometimes put mushrooms in a salad. It depends on the mushroom, of course, but it also depends on its preparation. So what I'm doing is I'm cutting these kind of thick since I am roasting them. You could roast them whole. I love baby bella mushrooms for the stuffed mushroom caps. If you guys want that recipe, please let me know in the comments down below, because I will totally make that. That is an appetizer. When I first met Lisa, I knew we were going to be best friends because that was awesome and she made that for me. Okay, I digress. So what we're doing is I've cut up an 8-ounce package of baby bella mushrooms with their stems. I did trim the stems clean, but I kept the stems off just so that it would, I pulled the stems off and then I cut the stems separately because I wanted to cut the stems down a little bit smaller so that they would cook more evenly. This is a half of a medium sweet onion that I have here that I'm just cutting into slices. I was doing this because, again, if they were so small that they would roast, they may burn. But also, Mom doesn't care for the onions in her mushrooms, so I wanted to give her the opportunity to have big pieces that she could pick out. Okay? So now I'm just waiting. I'm prepping these vegetables, but it's way too soon to put them on. I'm going to put these on once the 100 and... goodness, Jerry. Jeez. Once the hour and 5 minutes are up, then I'm going to go ahead and put the vegetables on because I only want them to roast for that half an hour at the end, okay? So now I've taken these baby potatoes, so there's like baby red ones and baby white ones. I don't know. Like I said, I ordered fingerling potatoes from Instacart, and this is what they substituted. So it's like a potato medley, I think is what they call it. But they're just really cute little potatoes. And I'm just cutting them in half. I wanted to do that because I wanted to get like a crispy inside, like a crispy crust on them, even though I can't eat them. But they look delicious. And I have not created, like I'm sure it's out there somewhere, but I realized that we put garlic, salt, and onion powder or minced onion on so many different recipes. Then I went ahead and I mixed the garlic salt with onion powder and onion flakes. The reason I did that was just to make it like quick and easy. And I found that seasoning mix is really good on stuff. That's all I'm going to say. It's really good on stuff. So that's what I'm putting on these. I'm just drenching them in a little bit of extra virgin olive oil. Actually, this is just regular pure olive oil. And then I'm putting a generous amount of the seasonings on there. And then I'm mixing them up. I'm also adding some fresh cut parsley that I went ahead and I cut. I just chopped up some fresh cut parsley. Just Italian plain leaf parsley, okay? Or flat leaf. Sometimes it's called flat leaf parsley. It depends on where you live. So how we prepped this pan was we covered an entire pan with aluminum foil. And then we created like a folded piece of aluminum foil in the middle. Because we want to roast the vegetables together, but we don't want the flavors to necessarily mix up, especially when we go to turn them. So I'm putting all these potatoes cut side down just to give them a really good start in the frying portion. But the great thing about that little bridge that we made is it's not attached. So it can just slide over if we didn't have enough room. And we didn't have enough room, so it worked out okay. You definitely want to bake the potatoes or roast the potatoes in one layer. But as far as the mushrooms were concerned, it was fine that they were on top of each other. The mushrooms actually cooked down quite a bit. So they'll do that anyway. All right? So just adjust your wall accordingly. And now we're going to go ahead and add our mushrooms to the other side. So with the mushrooms, what I did was I just basically put them like the onions down first, just to give a little bit of a base. And then we went ahead and we're going to put the mushrooms on top. The reason I decided to do that really is just because the onions will take a little bit more time to cook than the baby portobellos. And you want the onions to cook more than the mushrooms, because the mushrooms, you can have mushrooms raw. Having onions raw sometimes repeats on you. You can have onions raw too, but you know what I'm saying. All right, and we weren't making it perfect. So what I did afterwards is I drizzled this with some of that olive oil and then a little bit of the Himalayan sea salt. I just gave it a couple of squirts. The reason you like to salt your onions and mushrooms when you saute them is because it draws out some of the liquid and helps them cook a little bit. You want to season them when they're roasting for sort of a similar reason, but you also just want to season them for flavor. Okay, so I have this Himalayan pink sea salt that in a grinder that I got from Aldi a couple of years ago. And now I'm taking just a little bit of Kerrygold butter, probably just about an ounce on each side of the pan. And I'm just scraping little tiny pieces all over, a smattering on the mushrooms and a smattering on the potatoes. This is a not necessary step. It's just an added extra level of flavor. Not a laver of flavor. A laver of flavor? Maybe a laver of flavor. I don't know. But it's an extra level of flavor that I highly recommend. Let's just put it that way. Okay? And now I said I prepped these vegetables and I put them off to the side until the Instant Pot roast was done. Now, as far as the pot roast coming next, we want to go ahead and we want to prep a cutting board. I like to prep a cutting board with a dish towel underneath it in case some of the juices come out of the meat and get on the table and stuff. I actually have some plastic cutting boards that actually have like the well around the outside. But if you don't have that, I recommend putting a dish towel underneath it. Okay. So now we're going to set the oven to 375 degrees. And once the Instant Pot goes off, then we're going to go ahead and throw these in just for the duration of the natural release on the roast. Now, after 15 minutes of the natural release, you want to go ahead and set the quick release. Okay. If you're interested, this is plastic chimney, this silicone chimney that I have on there. It just helps direct the steam. Usually I cook at the table, and if the steam went straight up, it would hit that light bulb. So we went ahead and we just bought that on Amazon really inexpensively. And we just put it on there. Just make sure you point it away from you because the steam can hurt. And if you need to use a pot holder, paper towel, or even like a wooden spoon just to vent it open. Okay? So once all the pressure is released, take off the cover. We're leaving the pot on just right now. It's still counting up. So I've, like I said, cutting board on a dish towel. Then we're going to cover it with just a tent of foil just to let it rest. Okay, and it'll stay warm under there, I promise. In the meantime, we're just going to take all of our bowl of root vegetables and we're going to dump them in, same cooking liquid, same pot, everything. We're going to put on the lid and we're going to turn the valve to sealing, not venting. And then we're going to hit the manual button and we're going to change the pressure. I don't know if you know, but this Instant Pot has a low, medium, and high pressure setting. We're going to set it to low pressure and we're going to set it for 3 minutes. And then we're just going to let it go and we'll come back when it's all done. We're going to do a quick release when it's all finished. Okay, which is basically just moving the chimney right away. Now, I have asbestos fingers. Don't do that at home. It's warm for me, but it wasn't hot. That's a quick release, but use some protection and stay away from that steam, okay? Then once all the steam is released, you go ahead and you can remove your lid, and then you can go ahead and scoop out all of your vegetables. Oh, and don't forget to clean the steam off your camera. Oh, no, that's just me. Okay. So you want to just scoop out all your vegetables. Now, this recipe, again, I guess leaning towards the lower carb side of the world, does not thicken this gravy. It is just left like an au jus sauce. Of course, we've done this on our channel tons of times. We thicken with a cornstarch slurry. You could use arrowroot if you wanted to. There's no carbs in arrowroot. There's lots of instructions on the World Wide Web, but we just decided to leave this as an au jus. So the next part of the instructions were to take a oven-proof mitt or glove and to remove the pot from the inner pot is what they call it. Then we're going to move that out of the way, and the plug and the lid and everything, and then get the rest of the vegetables out. And then once you have all of your vegetables out, they suggest pouring this gravy right into a gravy boat, but we're going to put it in a fat separator first. Quite a bit of the fat comes right out, right to the top in the beginning, which is really nice. Now, I didn't do anything else to those vegetables other than sprinkle a little bit of that fresh parsley on top just to give it like a new fresh life. But I didn't even add butter or anything to them. It didn't need it, I swear. Okay, so now I'm pouring this into my fat separator. I do need to get a new one. This one's from Aldi and it's really old and it's plastic. But I love it. Basically, it has a stopper in there that prevents the fat from coming up through the spout until you're ready. So just to really cut down on the fat. And then once you've let the fat separate a little bit, you pull that little plug out. And what that does is then allows just like some gravy to come up the spout. It's really kind of cool. And the sieve on the top will catch all of the bits that you may not want. Let's put it that way. Just pour it in the gravy boat and serve. Now, as I mentioned, this was a very hearty meal. There, you can see the fat. Ew, the fat. And what a gravy separator does, if you've never used one, is it actually pours from the bottom of the cup so that you don't get all the fat coming out of the top. Okay? And I just set the rest off to the side for leftovers. What I did when I stored it is I actually stored it in the leftover gravy. Okay? Now, you want to cut this against the grain. It took me a minute to figure out where the grain was. It really did. It took me, as you could see there, hold on. The grain is going with the length of the meat. So what you do is you want to turn it sideways and cut those little tiny pieces off on the end. It was so shreddy that it was really hard to cut without it falling apart, even with my bread knife. And my bread knife is what I suggest. But hey, maybe you have a really sharp fillet knife that might work as well. Okay, and what the recipe creator had suggested was if you're going to use this cut of meat, which is a little leaner, then you make the slices a little thinner so it's more tender. But I have to tell you, I made those half-inch, quarter-inch slices just fine. And that meat was just amazing. Look at all the stuff falling off the top. Guess who get to eat that? Yeah, it's for the cook. All right. So that's everything. I served up some slices with carrots and some of the vegetables, and here's Jim's plate with a little bit of potatoes on there. So hopefully you guys really enjoyed this. I ask you, if you like it, to give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments down below. I'll get to them as soon as I can humanly possibly could. And as always, you guys take care. God bless, and I'll see you next time. Bye.